if you drive around like an idiot, you're going to get speeding tickets. But if you drive around and you obey the laws and you're empathetic with other drivers, chances are you're less likely to get a speeding ticket. Same with data. If you're abusive with your data, or if you're respectful of the customer's data, you're going to be less likely or more likely to get in trouble with the authorities.
Welcome to a whole new episode of Engati CX. I'm your host Kimberly, and we're really glad to have all of you join us today. On this show, we talk to CX and technology experts from around the world. We explore, uncover, and share fresh insights on creating experiences that your customers will remember and look forward to. Engati is the world's leading multilingual, no-code digital CX platform available across 14 channels with 45,000 solutions created across 186 countries in every domain and use case. Engati has also been recognized as a top platform by Inc. magazine, Tech World, CIO magazine, and many others. Engati recently also won the Cody 2021 award for the best AI-driven technology solution. We run the Engati blog, the video channel, the Engati CX podcast, receiving upwards of 400,000 visitors annually. And now for our guest, we have Scott Gilbey, a CX strategy and a CX design specialist at GrowCX. With expertise across multiple disciplines, customer and employee experiences, sales, marketing, operations, data mastery, process improvements, Scott transforms business models and drives outcomes. He is an expert industrial B2B field service and capital equipment, and he has previously worked in engineering, construction, building technology, and manufacturing. He has enjoyed a progression of senior roles globally in Canada, US, Europe, and Asia Pacific. Welcome to the show, Scott. We are so glad to have you join us today.
Thank you, Kimberly. I'm glad to be here, and thank you for that lovely introduction.
Perfect. Before we dive into our interview with Scott, don't forget to subscribe to Engati and tap the bell icon to get access to exclusive content coming from thought leaders from around the globe. Well, Scott, let's see what we have in our first question. We see that most of our effective ways of connecting with the most valuable prospects and generating qualified sales option is kind of changing. What do you have to say about this?
All right. Thanks, Kimberly. I think there are two ways to look at this, and not two different ways, but two goalposts, and we have to get the answer in the middle. One of those goalposts is understanding who your prospects are. And for that, most people in customer experience, sales, marketing, and other disciplines talk about segmentation. And that's critically important. And my view on segmentation looks something like this. And then you can find this on my LinkedIn profile, on my website, and I think you'll be putting this up as an image as well. But basically, the world is a segment. The biggest segment you can possibly get is the whole planet, and the smallest segment you can possibly get is a single person with some money they want to give you, and they want to buy something from you. And your market is somewhere between here and here. So we develop segmentations and proxies, whether they're B2B, B2C, healthcare, industrial, et cetera, and there are various processes we go by. This isn't a perfect thing, but it's the way I like to talk about segmentation. You need to know where your customers are or how you choose to define them. And that's where your prospects come from. There will be multidimensional, they will be in a certain industry, in a certain place. The prospects will be at a certain stage of development. Some customers will be ready to buy at a high level, others will be more basic. And so that's one of the goalposts, understanding your segments and writing it down and doing something about it. And the other goalpost is what you do as a company. Are you fixated on, for example, just your product? And my take that Maslow applies to customer experience this way, whereas too often we zoom past the product and think all we have to do is deliver a delightful experience. Well, if your product doesn't work, if it's too expensive, if it's perceived to be too cheap, get this sorted out first. And then this middle section here is where a lot of companies live, which is how do you get that product to the customer? So are you reliable? Is your brand consistent? When a customer goes online or talks to a salesperson or talks to your call center, when they actually receive a delivery, try to use the product or service, is that consistent with what their expectations were? So there's a broad spectrum across here, understanding yourselves. Don't go right to delivering something delightful if you know for sure that your product maybe doesn't quite do the job that it should. You got to balance that out. So in order to answer the question, how do you connect with the most valuable prospects and generate qualified sales opportunities, you got to know those goalposts and understand your audience, your segment, understand what you have to offer, the value it brings. And the closer those two goalposts are, actually in real life, it's harder to score, but in customer experience, the closer those two things are, the better off you are.
Correct. Yes, those were some pretty insightful infographics that you just showed us. We'll be putting it up here so that all of our audience and viewers can have a closer look and actually try to figure out where exactly they are. You spoke about how we can kind of identify our prospects. But now, after we've done that, how can businesses intend to systematically convert these qualified sales opportunities into customers?
Yeah, thank you for that second question. It builds nicely off of the first. And before we think about systematically converting qualified sales opportunities into customers, again, let's take a step back and say, look at what those opportunities are. And what does a customer look like? And where are they on their journey with you and with themselves? So I do have another infographic here that I show, and I use this as in some journey mapping exercises where, and this is a squiggly line, beginning to end of a total life cycle of a customer. They find you initially, they decide to buy. If they're happy, they will continue to buy. If they're not happy, they will leave you. And sometimes businesses just close. And along the way, they have to get some help. There's a lot of focus now on call centers, help centers, customer success, customer service in this area, but the whole spectrum is customer experience. So where exactly do these sales opportunities come from? And if you think of our previous comment on segmentation, there's another dimension, which is where are they on their relationship with you? If they're brand new, that's a bit different. Make sure when they arrive at your website and when you talk to a salesperson and they get a quotation and they get an invoice, make sure that's all coordinated. That helps turning these into opportunities, because it's whenever there's some difficulty or some disjointedness there, that drives customers away. So in some cases, in some businesses, it's not about how to convert, it's about how to avoid chasing them away, because most customers want to buy from you. And if you make it difficult, they'll just go somewhere else. So hint number one, don't chase them away. And then along the way, some of those sales opportunities will come from repeat business. Mm-hmm. So this is a cycle of customers who are happy. They'll buy again. They might even subscribe. That's ideal in a lot of businesses, that subscription business. And that comes from all these things working together. It can't be just one thing. And I will emphasize that a first-time customer who buys for the first time will have a certain set of expectations, and you will bring them on board. You'll introduce them to the whole organization, and sometime later, weeks, months, they'll buy again. And that buy again experience had better be very different from the buying the first time. And I'll mention data a little bit later on in this chat. Key piece. And some people say, is sales and marketing part of the experience? And the answer is, of course it is. All that has to work together. And even when customers are angry and leaving you, there's an opportunity to convert that angry customer. How often do you hear, if you have a detractor or someone who's angry and you fix it properly and professionally, ethically, and with empathy, if you fix those things, those sometimes become your greatest fans or become your greatest fans later on. So the conversion opportunity to a customer depends on a lot of things, but some very specific things that are unique to your business. Make sure you understand exactly what's going on. The more you understand it, the clearer you can articulate it, the easier it'll be to convert.
Perfect. I think the whole view that you've shown us of how important journey mapping is in terms of sales, because I think just the marketing team looks at journey mapping, right? I think that's where it stops, and I think it's very important to kind of include the sales folks in the mix as well, and kind of even place them in the roadmap here. I would also like to know what kind of elements in terms of people, organizations, or any other elements are more influential in shaping what our prospects are thinking and influencing their buying behavior.
Good question, Kimberly. There are a number of research papers available on this topic, and I would say it somewhat depends on the industry, but generally people trust those who they know, they can access, they can confirm. Some of these online social media review sites, I won't name any specifically, but some of them are not necessarily as reliable as we'd like to think. Scoring and comments, you just don't know the quality of the information that's there all the time. Having said that, there are some of the larger global, well-known, experienced data organizations that have research available on this, and they might tell you that just my understanding of it is that if they go to their local sources, they trust people. They also go to, and this is in my specific experience in this global B2B, they don't care about social media reviews. They'll check with their friends. They'll go on to chat groups that are specific to safety, for example. In industrial B2B, safety is critical. There are safety organizations within organizations, and in the social media world, LinkedIn, Facebook, or others, there are communities that share. A lot of trust in those, within those groups, and they talk as they should. Procurement, operations, maintenance, same thing. So professionals trust other professionals that they know.
Mm-hmm.
Another source, at least in my experience with industrial B2B, customers will search your website. And I know we spent a lot of time cleaning up our website content, because see previous comments about bringing a prospect converting to a customer. If there's a disconnect, if the salesperson says one thing and the website says another, then they phone, they can't get a hold of it. That's a big disconnect. That all has to work together. So there's huge trust when a prospect or a customer goes to your website, and they'll read it and they'll see it, period. So it's huge trust there. So again, I've mentioned safety and operations in my world of industrial B2B on a global scale. That's one thing that's very consistent. Again, knowing your customer, knowing your segmentation, those are two very specific target audiences that you need to address. Others in retail business, say consumer packaged goods, there's the whole supply chain. Is that reliable? So what is the noise in the supply chain?
Correct.
And that will have a huge impact on the customer's review of your business. And sometimes you can't control that.
Right.
You can control what you do. You can't control what the whole supply chain does. Airlines are classic. Airlines want you to go through the airport quickly and get on board, but the parking garage, airline doesn't control the parking garage, but it impacts what they're doing. So if there is a lot of noise about how bad it is to arrive and park and get from the car to the gate, if that noise is coming from credible places, it's going to impact the airline, even though it's out of their direct control. So does that help address that question, Kimberly? There are always nuances, but it's not theoretical. You've got to get a pen, pencil, piece of paper, talk to your team, write it all down. What actually happens? What can we control? What can we not? And where? And what are we hearing? And what can the customer is not chased away?
Yes, your perspective kind of adds more value to how exactly we're kind of seeing how businesses can actually start to note down what exactly the noise is disturbing their businesses. I was very curious to know what exactly is your kind of go-to rule or a golden rule that you would like to give our audience as to, I mean, news is everywhere, right? Everyone is talking about your product or stuff like that. How can we kind of stay intact with our business strategies and not fall off game?
Yeah, such a key point. You know, in the places where I've worked and the customers I've spoken to, or some of my own prospects now that I'm working with, one of the first things I ask is, what is your go-to-market strategy? Because they will say, Scott, can you help us with our go-to-market strategy? Well, what is it? And I think of an example of a prospective client that I spoke to recently. Again, industrial maintenance business in the US. And they have a problem with retaining customers for the second time around. They'll call, they'll go do some work. Most of those customers never come back. Some do. So they know this is a problem. So it didn't take long to really sit down and say, okay, let's look at this go-to-market strategy and recall what I was saying about lining up what the sales people are saying, what their website is saying, what's being heard in the news. This all have to be consistent. So this particular prospective client said, again, we have a problem with repeat business. What we really want to do is build preventive maintenance. We want to be the trusted source for fixing things in these plants. We want to go and fix that thing, turn a wrench, squirt some oil, put a meter on it, get some data, and help on the preventive maintenance program, and then talk about predictive and prescriptive maintenance. That's what they're talking about. But when the customer goes to the website, all they see is this: we can respond to emergency calls.
Correct, right.
Period. So it sounds like two different businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than choosing in fact, you can't choose a KPI or metric there. It's just, there's like two different businesses. So first thing is to decide how you're going to sell and market. What's your value proposition? Get those things aligned. And then it's easy. Then it says, okay, well, we want to decrease the number, or decrease the churn. We want to increase the number of customers that come back. First thing is count them. Believe it or not, this company didn't even have an idea of how many. They just knew lots were not coming back. So it sounds pretty crazy, but some of the data can be very, very straightforward. You don't even need behavioral analytics at this stage. You had 100 new customers in this month, 3 came back. There's a problem. That's almost all the data you need to start off with. And then you could drill into more detail, come back to this break and fix maintenance versus drilling toward preventive, predictive, and prescriptive maintenance. Those are different paths. So you've got to have steps along the way that can measure success.
Correct. Right.
So that's probably enough said on that topic. Now, again, got to get nitty gritty in the detail, and you got to connect the nitty gritty detail with the desired strategy. You got to know where you are. You got to know where you want to go. I don't like the term North Star. I think that's too esoteric. You want to be in the preventive maintenance space. Now you're in the break and fix space. So how do you get from here to there? Change management, classic. You just look at it from a change management perspective and get working.
Right. Can you help us in detail know what could be the key measures, metrics, and goals that businesses could kind of use to kind of measure their successes to a go-to-market model?
Yes. Again, in detail, there is no cookie cutter approach. Mm-hmm. It just totally depends on your market. If you are selling shoes in boxes, online or in a store, your metrics are going to be very different from if you are a paramedic service. Okay. There's no out of the box pick of metrics that you have to. I mentioned airlines. Everyone's talking e-commerce, curbside pickup. You go to the big home do-it-yourself shops. Simply being able to order online and pick up the curb right now is boring. It's not good enough to be able to do that. Everybody does that. So a metric can't be the number of curbside pickups. Can't be. Right. Because it's boring. If you don't do it, you're not in business. So you got to scratch a little deeper. Maybe it's how long the car is at the curb. Maybe it's the way the driver of the car says, thank you. Oh, by the way, I forgot a hammer. Can you run and get me one? A little bit of an upsell, but it's something that the customer said on the spot in real time. Can you respond to it? So that's an example of a metric for big box home do-it-yourself shops, that might be a very specific metric. I already mentioned airlines, about helping with the parking, getting from there to the garage. Kimberly, it's the answer is it depends, but you just need to understand exactly what the journeys that your customers are going through, understanding how far apart your offering is from what their expectations are, and then you pick some appropriate metrics. And the metrics should change. If not selling hammers at curbside pickup is a target, make it a target for a quarter.
Correct.
6 months, and then do something else. There's not only is there no perfect set of metrics that are cookie cutter across the board, for goodness sakes, don't pick metrics and stay with them for 10 years.
Right. You definitely put it in the best way and in a best perspective as to how we can kind of actually measure and kind of draw the line in our journey map towards our goal. You definitely said it best. Is there any other sound bites you would like to leave our audience with? Maybe a summary. I'm sure the infographics is something that our audience will definitely be curious about. But is there anything else you would like to leave our audience with?
Well, I sure do, and I have one more feature infographic, and I'm happy to share that, or this one with you. And the soundbite that I'd like to leave the audience with is data. We all talk about data. Not everybody interprets the word data in the same way. Data can be numbers, it usually is. Sometimes it's words, sometimes it's behavior. It's in my world, data is anything that helps you glean insights. And for that, here's the final and kind of feature infographic here then this is not theoretical, but in a lab exercise, if you had 1 hour to glean customer insights, get a stopwatch, ready, boom, go. It's a competition, go and glean some insights. Everyone's going to go to look at the data, like the NPS score, customer satisfaction scores, all these things. And a lot of CX professionals and others stay here and they get bogged down discussing whether 5-point or 10-point is enough. Some of that stuff is just a distraction. It's really getting, should we have peanut butter jelly sandwiches for lunch? Maybe, move on. It's that kind of thing. It's much more important to talk about your whole health, what you're eating for dinner and all that kind of thing. So score, customer verbatims, that's data. What are customers saying? Can you use artificial intelligence to, in real time, understand and interpret tens of thousands of comments pouring in per day? You need AI, but this is all data. Is the product being used by your customer? What are your warranty claims? There's all kinds of data that goes on operationally, financially, except your call centers, of course, are critical, and other things. So data is multidimensional and also very specific. But I do want to leave this final comment with the context of customer experience and data, looking at all the increasing regulations, starting with GDPR in Europe. You've got the California Act. Colorado's coming up with one new now on the consumer protection side, or consumer data protection. You've got health, PIPA. Canada's got, you've got to opt in before a company can send something. Your customer experience people, really need to understand that space. You don't need to be an expert. I happen to have studied it quite deeply and build that into my customer experience modeling. You got to understand it for two reasons. One is the law protects consumers, and the reason the law had to step in because companies were doing dumb things with data.
Right.
It's the same reason there are driving laws and speed limits and stop signs and traffic lights. If you drive around like an idiot, you're going to get speeding tickets. But if you drive around and you obey the laws and you're empathetic with other drivers, chances are you're less likely to get a speeding ticket. Same with data. If you're abusive with your data, or if you're respectful of the customer's data, you're going to be less likely or more likely to get in trouble with the authorities. And lastly, a simple example is for customer master data. Let's look at 4 pieces of information: name, job title, email, birth date. If you're collecting those 4 things, does the customer have to re-enter it every time they come back?
Right.
That's a bad customer experience. The 4th one I mentioned, birth date. If you don't need that, you have no business asking for it. If it's your doctor's office, they need it. If it's If it's a shoe retailer, they have no business asking for it. And that's a classic regulatory problem that customers or companies will run into. Collect the information you need only to do business, and then from a customer experience perspective, make sure it's available and correct all the time. So you'll keep customers happy, you won't run afoul of regulations. It's an essential piece of customer experience, understanding the data.
Yes,
So that's all I have to say on that topic, Kimberly.
perfect. This has definitely been a very insightful conversation, Scott, and definitely I am looking forward to talking to you more on these topics, more specifically in kind of getting out everything, not missing out on any specific thing that could kind of injure any of our business strategies. Thank you so much, Scott, for giving us your time. Your insights were really valuable, and I know our audience is going to enjoy this interview as much as I did.
Kimberly, thank you for having me. I enjoy the other podcast and information from Engati. And take care. Have a nice day.
Perfect. You too. We'll be
Thanks.
back again with a new episode and a brand new expert soon. So stay tuned and we'll see you around for the next one.